The rain had just started when Mara Ellison stepped out of the revolving doors of the St. Regis Hotel, her breath fogging in the cold Manhattan air. She wasn't supposed to be there. Cole had said he was working late, another one of those vague excuses that dissolved whenever she pushed for details. But something in his voice had cracked that afternoon. An edge, a tremor she had never heard before. It was enough to bring her here, standing beneath the golden awning, her coat clutched tight, heart beating like a trapped bird. That was when she saw him, Cole Harrington, her husband of 7 years, standing in the private parking corridor below the hotel's marble steps. His posture was rigid, his jaw tight. But it wasn't Cole who froze her blood. It was the man beside him, tall, dark coat, no expression. The kind of face you forget instantly, except she couldn't. Something about the way the stranger held himself, the quiet authority in his stance, made her chest tighten. He handed Cole a slim black drive, no bigger than a house key. Cole snatched it like it was burning his hand. Mara had never seen her husband look frightened before. She pressed herself behind a stone pillar, watching the exchange unfold in the reflection of a sleek Mercedes nearby. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. An unread message from Cole. Home late. Don't wait up. A lie. A perfect, polished lie. She swallowed hard, the metallic taste of betrayal coating her tongue. Was he cheating? Was the stranger a private investigator? A blackmailer? None of the guesses made sense. Cole wasn't a man who stumbled. He calculated. He controlled. He never, ever panicked. Until tonight. The stranger leaned closer, murmuring something Mara couldn't hear. Cole stiffened, scanning the garage like he expected someone to be watching. And then he looked right at her. Not directly. Not with recognition. But his gaze sliced through the shadows, landing inches from where she stood trembling. Mara stepped back too quickly, her heel skidding against wet concrete. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Cole's head snapped up. Mara didn't wait. She ran. Through the rain, through the blur of headlights, through the crush of her own unraveling world. By the time she reached their apartment door, her hands were shaking so violently she could barely fit the key into the lock. Hours later, when dawn crept through the blinds, Cole would find the apartment empty. Mara was gone, and on the dining table, placed with eerie precision, lay a single silver USB drive, one he had never seen before. A USB that would crack open everything he tried to bury, and the moment Cole plugged it in, the nightmare truly began. Boy, John, Joe, and cliffhanger. When Cole opened the USB, the first file wasn't data. It was Mara's voice whispering, "If you're hearing this, I'm already gone." For the first 3 years of their marriage, Mara Ellison convinced herself that silence meant peace. Cole Harrington wasn't the type of man who raised his voice. He didn't slam doors or throw accusations. His cruelty was quieter, polished, efficient, hidden behind a perfect smile that made other people call him charming. It started small. A comment about how she overthinks everything. A reminder that he handled the finances better. A suggestion that she shouldn't stress about work when promotions kept passing her by. Mara used to believe marriage was compromise. With Cole, compromise felt more like erasure. She remembered the first warning sign she ignored. The night Cole came home with a brand new Rolex and claimed it was a corporate gift. She'd later learned those gifts weren't given to his colleagues. They were purchased quietly, expensively, without explanation. When she questioned him, he kissed her forehead and laughed gently, as if she were adorable for worrying. Then came the second warning, the joint bank account, or more accurately, the disappearance of it. One morning she logged in and realized her name no longer appeared on the account. Cole brushed it off with a dismissive wave. "You're terrible with passwords, love. I'm just keeping things organized." It was said so sweetly that Mara apologized for questioning her own husband. Worst of all was the distance. The man she married used to hold her waist while she cooked, tracing circles on her skin. Now he sat across the dinner table, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up when she spoke. She missed him even when he was in the same room, but the cracks only became visible in hindsight. Standing there that night in the St. Regis garage, watching Cole accept that mysterious black drive, Mara finally saw the truth she had avoided for years. This marriage wasn't built on love. It was built on control. She replayed all the subtle manipulations, all the coincidences, all the nights he claimed to be buried in meetings, while she sat alone scrolling through old wedding pictures. Each memory sliced deeper and deeper still, until the bleeding inside her could no longer be ignored. She wasn't losing her husband. She had lost him long ago. But what she didn't yet know was how much more she stood to lose. Because at 3:17 a.m., while Mara packed a single bag, Cole received a phone call, one that made his face drain of color, and he whispered one chilling sentence. She knows. The apartment was silent when Mara slipped inside, drenched from the rain and trembling so hard she could barely turn on the light. Her reflection in the hallway mirror looked like a stranger, wide-eyed, pale, hair clinging to her cheeks. Everything inside her screamed to confront Cole, demand answers, demand the truth, but another voice, quieter and sharper, whispered, "If he's hiding something this dangerous, you can't stay." That voice won. She moved mechanically, as if someone else controlled her limbs. She grabbed a travel backpack from the closet, the one she hadn't used since her last work conference. Into it, she slid only essentials: a few clothes, her passport, a charger, a toothbrush. On impulse, she added the small leather journal she kept hidden under the bed, a place where she had written fears she never dared say out loud. Her hands shook as she powered on her laptop. She copied a folder from a hidden partition, one she had compiled quietly over the years without admitting to herself why. Suspicious emails, unexplained financial transfers, legal documents Cole insisted she never needed to see. She didn't understand the full picture, but she sensed the truth. Cole hadn't just lied to her. He'd used her. Once the transfer finished, she ejected the silver USB drive and held it in her palm. It felt heavier than metal, like all the weight of what she'd survived and what she was finally ready to expose. She placed it on the dining table, right in the center, where Cole would see it the moment he walked in. For a long moment, Mara just stood there, listening to the familiar hum of the refrigerator, smelling the faint trace of Cole's cologne lingering on his coat by the door. This had been her home, her marriage, her life. But now the walls felt like they were quietly closing around her, sealing her into a story she refused to keep living. She took one last look around, then slipped out into the hallway, locking the door behind her. Downstairs, a yellow cab waited at the curb. She climbed in without checking if anyone was watching. "Where to?" the driver asked. Mara stared out at the city lights smearing across the wet windshield, her voice barely above a whisper. "Anywhere but here." But as the cab pulled away, a pair of headlights turned on across the street, slow, deliberate, following. And the moment Mara realized she wasn't leaving alone, everything inside her went cold. Renee Maddox wasn't expecting anyone at 6:45 a.m., least of all a frantic knock that echoed through her Brooklyn brownstone like an alarm. She opened the door to find Mr. Hayward, the elderly doorman from Mara's building, holding a small paper bag and wearing a face drained of color. "Ms. Maddox, Mara asked me to bring this to you. She said if anything ever happened, well, she said you'd know what to do." Renee froze. She hadn't spoken to Mara in almost a year, not since their friendship fractured over choices neither of them were brave enough to admit. Still, something in the doorman's eyes, fear, urgency, uncertainty, made her take the bag without hesitation. Inside was a single item, the silver USB drive. Renee swallowed hard and reached for her MacBook Pro, pushing aside stacks of case files and cold coffee cups. She plugged in the USB. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then a single folder appeared. "If you're seeing this," her heartbeat rattled against her ribs. She clicked. A video file loaded. Mara appeared on screen, sitting in her dimly lit apartment. Her eyes were red, expression hollow yet steady, like someone standing on the edge of a cliff while the world burned behind her. "Renee, if you're watching this, I didn't disappear by accident. Cole has been lying to me for years. I think he's involved in something bigger than I ever understood. Financial manipulation, false identities, money routed through my name. I found proof, but I don't know who I can trust." Renee leaned closer, breath held. "I need you to keep this safe, and no matter what Cole says, don't believe him." The video ended abruptly, replaced by encrypted files with strings of numbers and dates, far beyond anything the average person could decode. Renee recognized just enough to know this wasn't corporate drama. This was federal crime-level evidence. She reached for her phone to call Mara, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Outside, a siren wailed down the street, slicing through the morning quiet like a warning. Renee stood abruptly, pacing her living room, panic rising. If Mara was truly in danger, who else knew she had this USB? Did Cole? Did whoever that man at the hotel was? Her phone buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. One message. You have something that belongs to us. Renee's blood ran cold, and before she could even lock the door, she heard slow, deliberate footsteps approaching her front steps. Cole Harrington had always been a man who controlled outcomes. Deals bent to his will, people adjusted themselves around him, and problems, when they appeared, were swiftly buried under charm or threats, whichever worked faster. But as he stepped into the apartment at 7:12 a.m., rain dripping from his tailored coat, control slipped from him for the first time. The apartment was too quiet, no coffee brewing, no footsteps, no Mara. Sweetheart, his voice echoed back empty. He checked the bedroom, the bathroom, the balcony. Nothing. Only the faint trace of her perfume lingering like a fading warning. A knot formed in his throat. Not fear for her, but fear of what she might have done. Then he saw it. The silver USB sitting in the center of the dining table, like an accusation. His pulse spiked. No, no, no. He snatched it up, teeth clenched. Had she found the files, the offshore accounts, the transfers tagged under her name? She wasn't supposed to know anything. That was the point of choosing someone like Mara. Quiet, trusting, accustomed to shrinking herself for the comfort of others. Cole slammed the USB into his laptop. The screen lit up, revealing the folder title, If You're Seeing This. His jaw locked. When Mara's recorded face appeared, he felt something he never experienced before, an emotion dangerously close to panic. How much did she know? Who had she told? He replayed the video twice, memorizing every word, every pause. The anger building inside him was volcanic, slow and brutal. When the video ended, he hurled the laptop across the room. It crashed against the wall, screen shattering. He grabbed his phone and dialed a number he rarely used, one saved under no name, only a single black dot. A deep male voice answered. She's gone, Cole said, breathing hard. And she has data. Where is she now? I don't know, but someone has the USB. A pause. You understand what must be done. Cole ended the call without answering. He stormed out of the apartment, heading straight to the parking garage beneath their building. As he approached his car, he noticed something that made him freeze. A single envelope on the windshield, his name written in Mara's handwriting. Hands trembling with rage, he tore it open. Inside was one sentence written with terrifying calm. I know who you really are. Cole's blood turned to ice, and when he looked up from the letter, someone was watching him from the far end of the garage. Someone he recognized far too well. The cab dropped Mara at the edge of a rural bus station in upstate New York, long before sunrise colored the sky. She moved quickly, hood pulled low, avoiding security cameras, keeping her head down as she purchased a one-way ticket north. Every step felt unreal, as if she were watching someone else flee into the night. By mid-afternoon, she reached a remote stretch of Vermont woods, thick pines, winding roads, and a chill that seeped through her coat. The cabin she rented under a false name sat at the end of a narrow dirt path, its windows dark, its porch sagging slightly. It wasn't much, but it was quiet, hidden, safe, or as safe as anywhere could be now. Inside, Mara locked every door twice, then lowered the faded blinds. She stood motionless for several seconds, letting the stillness press against her heartbeat until she could breathe again. Only then did she unpack the tools she knew she'd need, her laptop, a portable hard drive, and the leather journal she'd carried with her for years. The journal fell open to a page she wrote months earlier. Something is wrong with Cole. If anything ever happens to me, it will be because I ignored the signs. Her throat tightened. She powered up her laptop, connecting to a mobile hotspot. No Wi-Fi, no trace. Even the faint crackling of the fire sounded too loud in the tiny space. Mara began reviewing the digital copies she'd saved from Cole's accounts. Transfers routed overseas, shell companies she'd never heard of, numbers that didn't align with any legitimate operation. But then she saw it, a document titled Ellison Fund Authorization, her last name, her signature forged, a sum that made her head spin, millions. Her breath hitched. Cole wasn't just lying, he was building an entire criminal structure under her identity. If federal investigators uncovered this, she would be the first suspect. Not him. A wave of nausea rolled through her, and she sat down abruptly on the cabin floor, trembling. How long had he planned this? Was their entire marriage just a mechanism to erase his tracks? The only sound was the wind brushing against the old wooden boards and the truth crashing over her like a tidal wave. She wasn't just running from Cole. She was running from the law, too. Her vision blurred as she stared at the forged document, and that was the moment her burner phone buzzed, despite the fact she had never given the number to a single soul. Message: "You're not safe there, Mara." The message on Mara's burner phone glowed like a threat in the dim cabin light. "You're not safe there, Mara." Her pulse spiked violently. No one had this number. She'd bought the phone at a gas station 3 towns back, paid in cash, never activated location services. She backed away from the table, eyes darting toward the windows, searching for movement beyond the curtain. She typed quickly, "Who is this? How did you find me?" 3 dots appeared. Then, "I'm not your enemy." Rage surged under her fear. Strangers didn't send warnings. They sent traps. Meanwhile, 2 states away, Renee Maddox gripped her phone with trembling fingers. She'd just finished replaying Mara's video for the 5th time when the doorbell camera app buzzed again. The same man from earlier, the one the doorman claimed had been seen around Mara's building, was now standing at her front steps. But this time, he wasn't hiding in the shadows. He looked straight into the camera, expression calm, almost patient. He pressed the intercom button. "Ms. Maddox," he said, voice low and steady, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Renee froze. Her mind raced. USB? Documents? Mara's message? She forced her voice to stay steady. "Who are you?" The man tilted his head slightly as if deciding how much to reveal. "My name is Dorian Hale," he said, "and I need to speak with you. It concerns Mara." Renee's blood ran cold at the way he said Mara's name. Not threatening, not mocking, but almost protective. Like he knew her. Like he'd known her for a very long time. "Whatever you think I have," Renee replied, "you're not getting it." Dorian didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket, slow, deliberate, and held up something small and metallic. A badge. Department of the Treasury, Office of Special Investigations. Renee blinked, stunned. Treasury agents didn't show up at people's houses over marital drama. They showed up for crimes, serious ones. "This isn't just about Cole," Dorian said, "and it isn't just about money." His gaze hardened. "Your friend is in more danger than you understand." Before Renee could respond, Dorian lifted his eyes slightly, sensing something behind him. He stepped aside just as a black sedan turned onto the street. Too slow, too intentional. "Ms. Maddox," he said sharply, "step away from the windows." Renee's stomach dropped, because through the glass she saw the driver and recognized Cole's right-hand man from a photo Mara once showed her. He wasn't there to negotiate. He was there to silence. And Dorian, lowering his voice, whispered one chilling sentence. "Get your coat. We're leaving. Now." The cabin had grown colder by the hour, the kind of cold that seeped into bone and thought alike. Mara wrapped herself in a blanket, sitting cross-legged on the worn wooden floor as her laptop hummed beside the fire. She had spent the last 3 hours combing through encrypted data, files her husband never imagined she'd understand. But Mara Ellison wasn't just a quiet wife. She was a data forensics specialist. And tonight, she was finally allowing herself to see the truth. She clicked open another document. It appeared harmless at first. Transaction logs, schedules, dull financial entries. But when she layered the metadata, the entire structure shifted like a puzzle rearranging itself. Hidden beneath normal ledger entries was a complex algorithm linking offshore accounts, shell companies, and unidentified beneficiaries. But the part that twisted Mara's stomach was not the money itself. It was her name. Ellison Trust, Ellison Executive Fund, Ellison Overseas Assets, all created within the last 6 months, all tied to her social security number, all with forged signatures that looked terrifyingly perfect. No, Mara whispered, her throat tight. Cole hadn't been planning to ruin her life as a reaction. He had engineered it, carefully, quietly, years in the making. Every time he dismissed her questions, every time he told her not to worry about finances, every time he forgot to include her on accounts, he was building a trap, and she had lived inside it like a devoted, oblivious wife. Hands trembling, she clicked a final file, one with a strange label. DH, contract, liability. Her breath hitched as the document opened. It wasn't about her. It was about someone else entirely. A man named Dorian Hale. Her pulse hammered in her ears as she scrolled. Dorian's name appeared in connection with several shell companies, some tied to Vanguard's Corp., some tied directly to Cole. Financial disputes, blackmail indicators, suppressed investigations, and one highlighted line. If Hale intervenes, initiate contingency protocol, use spouse as leverage. Spouse. Her. Mara covered her mouth as nausea rose. Cole hadn't just used her identity. He intended to use her life as a bargaining chip in a war she didn't understand. The wind howled outside, rattling the cabin windows like skeletal fingers tapping for entry. Mara stared at the screen, her heart pounding with a realization more chilling than the cold Vermont air. This wasn't marital betrayal. This was a criminal empire, and she was at the center of its collapse. The cabin lights flickered, once, twice, then went out completely. And through the sudden darkness, Mara heard boots crunching on the snow outside, stopping right at her door. The darkness inside the cabin pressed on Mara like a memory she had tried to bury. As the footsteps outside paused, her mind spun backward, years before the forged documents, the offshore accounts, and the lies that now wrapped around her like barbed wire. Back to the beginning, before she realized the cracks were there at all. She met Cole Harrington at a corporate networking event in Midtown. He had smiled at her like she was the only person in the room. A polished man with a Mont Blanc pen clipped to his pocket, a Rolex that caught the light just enough to hint, but not brag about his success. Mara, shy and unused to attention, fell for the warmth he manufactured so expertly. In hindsight, she understood. Predators always study their prey. Their first year together felt like a dream. Weekend trips, lavish dinners. Cole telling her he admired her intelligence, her dedication. He framed himself as the man who would protect her from a world too sharp for someone as gentle as she was. But protection slowly turned into possession. The first shift came quietly, a suggestion that she stop spending so much time with friends. Then a subtle critique of her job, how it drained her, how she deserved a more relaxed life. Mara thought he was being supportive. She didn't notice how her world began shrinking around him. By year 3, Cole had taken over their finances to make life easier. By year 4, he started deciding where she worked, where they lived, who they saw. By year 6, he had constructed a life where every detail, from dinner reservations to credit cards to medical insurance, ran through his hands. Mara wasn't weak, but she was alone. And Cole exploited that loneliness with surgical precision. The final warning sign had appeared 6 months ago, though she didn't see it then. Cole came home at 2 a.m., smelling of expensive scotch in someone else's perfume. When she asked where he'd been, he brushed her cheek and whispered, "Don't make things complicated. Not I'm sorry, not let me explain. Just a reminder of her place." And now, sitting in a dark cabin, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes, she understood something that tore through her heart. He hadn't changed. He had always been this man. She had just taken too long to see him. The footsteps outside moved again, slow, deliberate. A shadow passed the window, and then a voice drifted through the cold air, low and unmistakably male. "Mara, open the door. We need to talk." Cole Harrington prided himself on composure. It was part of his brand. The calm, brilliant executive who closed multi-million-dollar deals over a single espresso. The man who never raised his voice, never cracked under pressure. But as he stood in the Vanguard's Corp parking garage, clutching Mara's letter in his fist, that polished veneer finally split. Across the dim garage, the figure watching him stepped forward just enough for the overhead lights to catch his face. Dorian Hale. Cole's jaw tightened. "You again." Dorian didn't respond immediately. He simply gave Cole a measured, calculating look, as if Cole were an equation he'd already solved. Cole hated that, hated how exposed he felt. "I know Mara saw us," Dorian said at last. "And I know she's gone." Cole scoffed, forcing a smirk. "My wife is having an emotional episode. She'll be back." Dorian's expression didn't change. He walked closer, shoes echoing sharply against concrete. "No, Cole, she won't. Not this time." For the first time in years, Cole felt something unfamiliar scraping at the edges of his confidence. Vulnerability. Dorian Hale was a problem he couldn't intimidate, couldn't bribe, couldn't predict. And if Dorian had approached Mara, that meant the situation was unraveling faster than he planned. He pulled out his phone, typing furiously. His right-hand man, Lyle Wren, replied instantly. "We found the lawyer. No sign of the USB." Cole cursed under his breath. Dorian noticed. "So she left something behind," Dorian said softly. "And you're terrified of what's on it." Cole forced a laugh, but it cracked mid-breath. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Oh, I do." Dorian stepped close enough for Cole to see the faint scar running along his jawline. An old wound, but not forgotten. "You forged Mara's identity. You moved millions through her accounts. And now your entire operation is one frightened woman away from collapsing." Cole's mask slipped entirely. "You don't know what she is," Cole snapped. Dorian's brow lifted. "What is she, Cole?" Cole opened his mouth, then stopped himself. He had almost said too much. Almost revealed the one secret he could never let surface. Instead, he stepped back, voice low and venomous. "Stay out of my way, Hale." Dorian didn't move. "You won't find her. I already have people looking. They won't get to her first." Cole froze. "What does that mean?" Dorian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, eyes sharpening. He looked up at Cole with a slow, deliberate breath. "It means Mara is no longer your problem, Cole. She's mine." And somewhere deep in Vermont, a gun clicked outside Mara's cabin door. Renee Maddox had lived through hostile cross-examinations, high-stakes trials, and judges who could crush a career with one raised eyebrow. But nothing compared to the fear crawling up her spine as she watched the black sedan stop in front of her brownstone. The engine didn't turn off. The headlights didn't dim. It just waited. "Get your coat," Dorian ordered quietly. "We need to move." Renee hesitated only a second before grabbing her bag. Her instincts screamed that this man, this stranger with a federal badge and eyes too steady for comfort, was her only chance of surviving the next 5 minutes. She followed him through the back door of the brownstone, down the narrow alley lit by a single flickering bulb. The cold air stung her skin. Dorian kept one hand slightly behind him, ushering her forward while scanning every shadow. "Why is Cole after me?" Renee whispered. "He thinks you have the full contents of the USB." "I don't." "That doesn't matter," Dorian replied. "Cole doesn't need truth. He needs control." They crossed into the back courtyard when the first gunshot shattered the quiet. Sharp, precise, hitting the brick wall inches from Renee's shoulder. She gasped, stumbling. Dorian grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a maintenance shed. "They're not here to scare you," he said. "They're here to remove you." Renee's pulse thundered. "This is insane. Cole wouldn't—" Dorian cut her a look so dark it silenced her. "He would, and he has." Before she could ask what that meant, another shot rang out, closer this time. The sedan's back door opened, and a man stepped out. Lyle Wren, Cole's fixer. Broad shoulders, gloves, no hesitation in his stride. Renee felt the world tilt. "I've seen him before. He came to the firm once." "He wasn't there on business," Dorian said. "He was assessing you." Assessing, not meeting, not negotiating. Assessing. For disposal. Dorian reached inside his coat and pulled out a compact tactical tool. Not a gun, but something designed to jam signals. He glanced at Renee. "You trust me?" "No," she whispered. "Good," he said. "You shouldn't trust anyone right now, but you're safer with me than with the alternatives." He activated the jammer. The sedan's headlights flickered, its engine sputtering. Lyle cursed and turned sharply toward them. "Run," Dorian said. They sprinted into the night. Renee's breath burning, Dorian just steps behind her. But halfway down the block, a new vehicle turned the corner. One Renee recognized instantly, Cole's private driver. And he wasn't alone. The cabin had never felt as suffocatingly small as it did now. The darkness pressed in from every side, swallowing the weak glow of Mara's dying laptop screen. She forced her breathing to slow, listening, really listening, to the silence outside. The footsteps she'd heard earlier had faded, but that didn't bring relief. The kind of men Cole sent didn't give up. They repositioned. Mara's burner phone buzzed again. She flinched so hard the blanket slipped from her shoulders. Her pulse thudded violently as she lifted the phone with trembling fingers. A new message. "Don't turn on the lights." Her throat tightened. She shut the laptop immediately, plunging the room into shadow. Only the faint glow from the fire remained. Another message appeared. "They're watching the windows." For the first time in hours, fear didn't paralyze her. It sharpened her. She crouched low, crawling away from the window, staying beneath the line of sight. Every instinct she'd ignored for years now screamed in unison. "Survive," she typed quickly. "Who is this? Are you with Cole?" A long pause, then, "Cole is the reason you're in danger. I'm trying to keep you alive." Her heart twisted. Believing a stranger was foolish. Just the sort of vulnerability Cole had counted on. But someone else knowing her location meant she was out of time. She reached up to grab her backpack, stuffing her journal and external hard drive inside. Her hands trembled. But her mind sharpened with a determination she didn't recognize as her own. She wasn't running blindly anymore. She was running with purpose. Then her phone buzzed once more. "Mara, leave through the back door. Now." Her breath hitched. She looked toward the narrow hallway leading to the back of the cabin. A thin beam of moonlight filtered through the kitchen window, casting angular shadows across the wooden floor. She moved silently, each step measured. She reached for the door and froze. The doorknob was vibrating, shaking, as if someone on the other side was testing it. Very slowly, Mara backed away, pulse screaming in her ears. Whoever they were, they had found her. Her phone lit up again, illuminating her terrified face. "If you stay inside, you die." The doorknob turned sharply, and then the back door slammed open, crashing against the wall as a figure stepped into the moonlit kitchen. Silhouette tall, armed, and unmistakably hunting. The night wind whipped against Renee's face as she ran alongside Dorian, her breath burning and legs shaking. Brooklyn's streets blurred into streaks of amber lights and shadowed alleyways. Somewhere behind them, the sedan's engine roared back to life, headlights sweeping across parked cars like a predator searching for prey. "Don't stop," Dorian urged, gripping her wrist and pulling her around a corner. His voice was controlled, but Renee caught the edge beneath it, a razor-thin tension that revealed the situation was spiraling faster than even he anticipated. They reached a narrow service street, the kind lined with dumpsters and metal fire escapes. Dorian pressed her back against the cold brick wall and scanned both ends of the street. "Why are they after me?" Renee whispered, chest heaving. "I'm just a lawyer." "You're the only person Mara trusted," Dorian said. His eyes were sharp, calculating every possible route. "Cole knows that, and he thinks the USB is with you." "It isn't." "That doesn't matter," Dorian cut in. "They're not here to retrieve evidence. They're here to eliminate liabilities." A chill coiled through her entire body. A movement flickered at the far end of the alley. Lyle Wren, stepping into view, a phone pressed to his ear. His gaze swept the alley, methodical and unhurried. He was hunting. Renee's knees nearly gave out. "He's going to kill us." "Not if we move now," Dorian said, pulling her toward a rusted fire escape ladder. Renee hesitated. "Up there? It won't hold." "It only needs to hold for 10 seconds. They climbed. The metal groaned beneath their weight but didn't collapse. From the rooftop, Brooklyn stretched out in a dizzying maze of buildings and flickering streetlights. Dorian crouched low. We're heading toward the river. If we reach the waterfront, I can get us out. That's miles from here. It's either that or let Cole's cleanup crew catch up to us. They crossed from rooftop to rooftop, the wind biting at their faces. Renee's lungs screamed, her hands shaking with adrenaline. But she followed because stopping meant dying. Halfway across the fourth building, her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. A message from an unknown number. You should have stayed out of this, counselor. Her stomach dropped. Dorian, they're tracking me. He stopped abruptly, eyes widening for the first time. How long have you had that phone? It's my work cell. Throw it, now. Before she could react, a distant rifle crack split the night. The bullet hit the rooftop inches from her boots, sending shards of concrete flying. Dorian pulled her down, and across the skyline, the faint red glint of a sniper scope slid directly over Renee's chest. The sniper's red dot slid across the rooftop like a quiet death sentence. Renee flattened herself against the cold concrete, her breath jerking in her chest. Dorian pulled her behind a ventilation unit, shielding her body with his own, as another shot cracked through the night, ricocheting off metal. They sent a sniper? Renee gasped. Dorian's voice was steady. Cole doesn't leave loose ends. He reached into his jacket again, this time pulling out not a gun, but a slim, encrypted device. He tapped rapidly on the screen, glancing up between keystrokes. What are you doing? Renee whispered. Calling in a blackout, he murmured. They're using thermal to track us. Within seconds, the rooftop lights flickered and died. The skyline beyond them dimmed. A rolling wave of darkness spread across 5 surrounding blocks. A power cut? Renee whispered in disbelief. Dorian didn't look at her. A tactical blackout. She stared at him, breathless. Who are you, Dorian? For the first time, his expression shifted. Not anger, not irritation. Something heavier. Something he'd been carrying for years. I told you I wasn't your enemy, he said quietly. But I didn't tell you who I'm after. Cole, Renee breathed. Dorian shook his head slowly. Not just Cole. He reached into his coat again and withdrew a worn leather badge case. He opened it, revealing an emblem Renee had never seen before. Far more specialized than a normal treasury badge. Office of Strategic Financial Enforcement, Deep Cover Division. Renee blinked. There's no such department. There isn't, he said. Officially, her pulse pounded. So this wasn't about Mara? Dorian hesitated for a long moment. Then he spoke, voice barely above the wind. I've been tracking Cole's network for years, long before Mara ever married him. When she appeared in his documents, it wasn't random. What do you mean? He looked at her, eyes shadowed with something painful. Mara wasn't just a convenient target. She was chosen. Renee felt her stomach drop. Chosen? Why her? Dorian exhaled, a slow, fractured breath. Because Mara Ellison isn't who she thinks she is. He paused. And Cole knows it. Renee stared at him, speechless. But Dorian wasn't finished. Mara has a connection to my case. A connection she doesn't even know about. His eyes darkened. A connection to me. Renee's breath caught. What kind of connection? Dorian opened his mouth to answer, but a voice echoed from the next rooftop, cutting through the darkness like a blade. Dorian Hale, step away from the lawyer. It wasn't Cole's men. It was someone far more dangerous. Manhattan rose before her like a steel and glass battlefield as Mara stepped off the early morning bus at Port Authority. The cold wind whipped through the terminal, carrying the familiar hum of taxis, sirens, and restless ambition. A month ago, this city had been her prison. Tight schedules, muted dreams, a marriage that drained the life from her. But now, standing beneath the skyscrapers, reflecting the pale dawn, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt awake. The night escape from the Vermont cabin had pushed her to the brink. Running through the woods, dodging headlights, hiding in the back of a delivery truck until sunrise. She hadn't slept. She barely ate. But the moment she crossed into Manhattan, adrenaline straightened her spine. She was no longer running from Cole. She was running toward the truth. Mara zipped her coat tighter and slipped into the crowd. No one noticed her, and for the first time, anonymity felt like power. She passed a polished glass storefront, catching her reflection. Dirt on her cheek, hair tangled, but her eyes, they were different, sharper, steadier, done being naive. She ducked into a small cafe on West 52nd, ordered a black coffee, and claimed a corner table. With hands still stiff from the cold, she unpacked her laptop and external drive. The files she'd found in the cabin weren't enough to take Cole down. She needed the missing pieces, the documents stored on the Vanguardi servers, the ones she once had limited access to during her data work. Cole assumed she would never return. He counted on fear to keep her away. But Mara Ellison had spent years shrinking herself so Cole could shine. Today, she reclaimed every piece of herself he tried to break. She slipped a pair of glasses on, ones she rarely wore, but now gave her a sharper, more professional edge. She opened a secure browser, rerouting her signal through multiple proxies. Her fingers flew across the keys with a precision Cole never respected but always feared. She was good, very good, and she wasn't alone anymore. A notification pinged, an encrypted message. From unknown subject. He knows. Body. They're setting a trap in the Vanguardi's boardroom. Don't walk in alone. Mara's breath caught. A trap? For her? Or for Dorian? Or both? She typed back quickly. Who is this? How do you know my plan? 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Appeared again. Then, Mara, I'm already inside the building. Her stomach tightened, and when a shadow fell across her cafe table, she looked up and saw someone she never expected standing right in front of her. Mara's breath caught as the shadow fell across her table. She looked up, expecting Cole, expecting danger, and instead found Renee. Her hair was windblown, her coat half-buttoned, eyes wide with urgency. Mara, she whispered, gripping the table edge, you can't go to Vanguardis alone? Cole's setting you up. For a moment, Mara simply stared. She hadn't seen Renee since the night everything unraveled. Seeing her now, alive, shaken but determined, felt like a lifeline thrown into a storm. How did you find me? Mara asked. I didn't, Renee said. He did. A second shadow appeared. Dorian Hale stepped into view, face carved with resolve. Mara stiffened. You... Later, Dorian cut in. Right now, we don't have much time. Cole's summoned the executive board. They think you're leaking confidential data. If you walk into that building without evidence, they'll hand you over to federal authorities. He paused, and Cole made sure the evidence points to you. Her pulse pounded. She'd suspected this, but hearing it spoken aloud made her skin burn. Renee leaned in. But you have the truth, Mara. The files you found in Vermont are enough to expose Cole, if you present them before he shuts you down. Dorian slid a key card across the table. Service elevator. It'll get you to the 28th floor without security stopping you. Once inside the boardroom, you'll plug this drive into their central display system. He placed a sleek black data stick beside the key card. This contains a mirrored extraction of Cole's hidden accounts, he said. Combined with your files, it's the full picture. Mara stared down at the objects, so small yet powerful enough to overturn an empire. She exhaled slowly. Let's finish this. Minutes later, Mara entered the towering glass lobby of Vanguardis Corp. Every polished marble tile, every fluorescent light, every security camera reminded her of the life she once lived. Obedient, compliant, controlled. No more. She slipped into the service elevator and rode in silence to the executive floor. When the doors opened, the hallway was empty except for the double doors of the boardroom at the far end. Muffled voices spilled through. Cole's voice rose above them, smooth, confident, lying with rehearsed precision. She's unstable. She left threatening messages. I fear for her safety and ours. Mara tightened her grip on the drive. Not today, Cole. She pushed the doors open. The room froze. 12 executives turned. Cole's face drained of color. Mara, he whispered. She stepped inside, each word sharp and steady. Let's talk about what you fear most, Cole. She approached the screen, lifted the drive, and before she could plug it in, a board member stood abruptly and said, Ms. Ellison, you're under internal investigation. Please step away from the console. For a moment, Mara couldn't breathe. The boardroom felt colder than the Vermont cabin, colder than the night she ran for her life. The board member's command, "You're under internal investigation," hung in the air like a verdict waiting to fall. Cole recovered first. He stepped forward, voice dripping with manufactured concern. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be here. You need help. Please, sit down." Mara ignored him and faced the board. "Whatever he told you, it's a lie. Cole forged my signature, moved millions through accounts tied to my name, and—" the chairman raised a hand. "Ms. Ellison, at 6 a.m., we received new evidence. Evidence that came from someone claiming to be your legal counsel." Mara's heart slammed against her ribs. "My what?" The door swung open. Renee walked in. But this wasn't the Renee who saved her. Her hair was neatly tied back, her blazer crisp, her expression unreadable. And in her hand, a folder stamped with the Vanguardi's legal seal. Mara's stomach dropped. "Renee, what are you doing?" Renee didn't look at her. "As your attorney of record, I submitted the documents necessary for the board to proceed with a mental health-related intervention, for your own protection." Cole's face barely hid his satisfaction. This was his trap, his perfect trap. Mara shook her head slowly. "Renee, no, you know this isn't true. Cole's framing me." Renee finally met her eyes. For a split second, just one, Mara saw something flicker. Regret, guilt, fear. But it was gone before she could read it. "The board has voted," Renee said. "You're to be placed on immediate administrative leave, pending psychological evaluation." Mara felt the floor tilt. She had expected traps, lies, ambushes. But not this. Not betrayal. Cole stepped beside Renee, voice gentle for the audience, but sharp enough for Mara to hear the threat beneath it. "You should have stayed gone, Mara," the board murmured among themselves. Security lingered near the door, waiting for a signal. Mara forced herself to stand tall. She reached into her coat pocket, slowly, deliberately, and lifted the second USB drive, the one Dorian gave her. "You want evidence?" she said, her voice steady. "Let's show them everything." She stepped toward the console. A hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "Renee." "Mara," she whispered urgently, eyes wide now, panicked. "Don't plug that in. You don't understand. They'll kill you before the truth loads." The room froze, and then Renee leaned closer, breath trembling, and whispered the words that shattered Mara's world. "I had no choice. Cole owns more than you think, including part of my past." Chaos erupted the moment Renee whispered those trembling words. "Cole owns part of my past." Mara didn't have time to process it. The boardroom shifted like a trapdoor falling open. Executives murmured, security stepped inward, and Cole, always composed, always calculating, finally let himself smirk openly. He thought he'd won. "Mara," he said softly, "hand me the drive. I'll take care of everything." But the thing Cole never understood was that fear, when pushed far enough, becomes resolve. Mara yanked her wrist free from Renee's grip and stepped back. "Stay away from me." Security advanced. Renee moved aside, guilt written across every line of her face. She wasn't the threat now. She was collateral damage in Cole's empire. Before anyone could reach Mara, the boardroom doors blasted open. Dorian Hale stormed inside. His coat whipped behind him, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights, his expression colder than the steel skyline outside. Gas rippled through the room. Cole's smirk vanished. "Step away from her," Dorian commanded, voice sharp enough to cut through the tension like a blade. "Agent Hale," the chairman stammered, "you have no jurisdiction." "I do now," Dorian said, tossing a stack of federal orders onto the table. "Vanguardi's Corp is under active investigation for financial crimes and identity fraud." Cole barked a laugh, but it cracked at the edges. "You're bluffing." Dorian leveled his gaze at him. "Try me." Security hesitated. The executives exchanged frantic looks. Cole's empire, built on intimidation and silence, was suddenly trembling. Dorian crossed the room in 3 strides and positioned himself between Mara and everyone else. Body angled protectively, she felt the heat of adrenaline radiating off him. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, eyes scanning her face. They were preparing to detain you. Mara swallowed. I know. Dorian's jaw tensed. Come with me. Now. He reached for her arm, gentle, steady. But before she could move, Cole slammed his hand down on the conference table. She doesn't leave this room. Dorian turned, and Mara saw something dark and dangerous ignite behind his eyes. She's not your property, Cole, he said. She never was. Cole gestured sharply. His right-hand man, Lyle Wren, stepped into the doorway, blocking the exit, blocking Dorian's escape route. This wasn't a negotiation. This was an ambush. Dorian shifted his stance, subtly pushing Mara behind him. Mara, he murmured, when I say run, you run. Don't look back. Her breath caught. Run where? He didn't answer, because at that moment, Lyle reached into his coat, and the metallic glint of a weapon caught the boardroom lights. The moment Lyle's weapon flashed, the boardroom exploded into motion. Executives ducked beneath the table, chairs toppled, and security scrambled. But Dorian was already moving, swift, controlled, his arm knocking the weapon aside just as it fired. The bullet buried itself into the wall inches from Cole's head. Lyle staggered, unprepared for actual resistance. Dorian seized the opportunity, twisting his wrist until the gun clattered to the floor. Security swarmed instantly, finally understanding who the real threat in the room was. They pinned Lyle down as he thrashed, shouting Cole's name. Cole didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply stared at Mara, eyes burning with disbelief and hatred. What did you do, Mara? He hissed. What did you tell him? Mara stepped forward, her fear sharpening into something colder, calm clarity. The truth, Cole. Something you've avoided your entire life. Dorian lifted the federal order again, voice carrying authority that left no room for argument. Cole Harrington, you're formally under investigation for financial fraud, identity manipulation, and international money laundering. The board erupted in gasps and murmurs. A few executives stood, distancing themselves from Cole as though corruption were contagious. Cole barked a laugh, brittle and angry. You can't touch me. Vanguardis needs me. These people need me. But the chairman, a man who once admired Cole, rose slowly from his seat. No, Cole. What this company needs is integrity, and you've broken that beyond repair. Dorian signaled to the federal marshals waiting outside. Two agents entered swiftly, securing Cole's wrist with cold steel cuffs. Cole struggled, fury snapping across his features. Mara! He shouted as they dragged him toward the door. You think this ends with me? You have no idea who else is involved. You have no idea who you are. Mara's heart hammered, but she kept her expression composed. I know enough, she said quietly, and I'm done being afraid of you. Cole was pulled out of the boardroom, shouting promises of revenge that echoed down the hallway until the door closed behind him. Silence followed, heavy, hollow, liberating. Renee sank into a chair, tears filling her eyes. Not of fear this time, but relief. It's over, she whispered. Dorian shook his head. Not yet. Cole's arrest is only the first step. His network is bigger than we thought. Mara's breath tightened. How much bigger? Dorian looked at her with a seriousness she hadn't seen before. Big enough, he said, that taking him down just triggered the people above him. Before Mara could respond, an agent rushed into the room. Sir, you need to see this. Someone posted Mara's location online. Dorian turned to Mara, face draining of color. They're coming for you next. For the first time in weeks, Mara Ellison walked freely through Manhattan without looking over her shoulder. Cole's arrest sent shockwaves through Vanguardis Corp., then through the financial world, then through the agencies that had quietly monitored his movements for years. His network, once untouchable, fractured overnight. Names surfaced, accounts were frozen. Allies turned on each other to negotiate reduced sentences. But most importantly, Mara was cleared, her identity restored, her record expunged, her freedom returned. She sat in a quiet corner of Central Park, a warm coffee cupped in her hands. Winter sunlight filtered through bare branches, soft and gentle, a stark contrast to the chaos she had survived. People passed in slow, peaceful rhythms, strollers, joggers, couples. Life moved on. and for the first time she felt ready to join it. Renee approached the bench, wrapped in a long coat and a quiet humility. "Mind if I sit?" Mara nodded. Renee exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry, Mara. I should have fought harder. Cole had something on my family. I thought if I cooperated, no one would get hurt." Mara studied her for a long moment, then spoke softly. "We all make decisions when we're scared. What matters is what we do now." Renee's eyes filled with gratitude and relief. She wasn't forgiven easily, but she was given a chance to heal. They would rebuild slowly, carefully. A shadow fell across the path. Dorian Hale approached. For once, there was no tactical urgency in his stride, only a quiet warmth. The wind brushed through his dark coat as he stopped before her, his gaze softening in a way she had never seen in the boardroom chaos. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Mara smiled faintly. "Still learning how to breathe." Dorian nodded. "Good. You deserve that." He sat beside her, leaving a respectful space. Yet something unspoken bridged the distance between them. There was history, dark, tangled, unfinished. But there was also possibility. "The agency can offer you relocation," Dorian said gently. "New identity, new start, protection." Mara looked out across the lake, the sun shimmering across its surface. "I don't want to disappear anymore. I spent too many years invisible." Dorian's jaw relaxed. "Then stay. Build your life here. You won." A small, trembling laugh escaped her. "Did I?" "You survived him." Dorian met her eyes. "That's more than a victory. That's reclaiming your life." Mara let the words settle in her chest like a seed finally finding soil. Then Dorian offered something unexpected, his hand steady and open, not demanding, not claiming, simply offering. She took it, and as their fingers intertwined, none of them noticed the man in a gray coat watching from across the park, until he lifted his phone and whispered, "She chose her side. So, that's the end of our story. And if you're still here with me right now, my friend, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in its own quiet way. Maybe you saw pieces of yourself in Mara, her fear, her courage, her ability to rise again even when the world tried to break her. Maybe you're carrying your own battles, the kind no one else sees. The Stoics used to say, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And that is Mara's lesson to all of us. We can't control betrayal, loss, or the unfairness that finds us, but we can control what we become afterward. Strength isn't built in the easy chapters. It's forged in the nights we think we won't survive, yet somehow do. So if today feels heavy, please remember another Stoic truth. The obstacle is the way. Your pain is not the end. It's the beginning of the person you're meant to grow into. If this story meant something to you, even just a little, I'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep walking through stories and through life together. You're not alone, and you're stronger than you think. Before we close, I want to make something very clear for YouTube and for everyone watching. This story is a work of fiction created purely for emotional reflection and entertainment. The characters, events, companies, and situations in this narrative are entirely imagined and not based on real individuals or real criminal cases. Any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. The purpose of this drama is to explore themes of courage, healing, and personal growth in a safe storytelling space, not to present factual claims or real-world allegations. So please enjoy it as a cinematic journey, not as documentary content. Thank you for understanding and for supporting responsible storytelling on this channel.